So there was this individual who was hiking in the mountains, and he gets to a point that the only way he can continue is to go over a bridge. Now this bridge was hung on cables. So he goes on the bridge, and halfway through the bridge, the wind picks up and the wind starts shaking the bridge, and he's really scared that any moment the wind is going to flip the bridge, he's going to fall down, he'll be killed. So he turns to God and says, God, please stop the wind, and if the wind stops and I make it to the other side, I'll give you $5,000 to charity. Charity of your choice, Lord. Doesn't stop. The wind continues even more. He goes up to 10,000, eventually 20,000. Once he says 20,000, the wind stops. And now he continues to walk and it's calm. Then he starts thinking to himself, says, God, 20,000 is a lot. You know what? Let's go back to 5,000. As soon as he says that, boom, the wind picks up and the bridge starts shaking. And he looks up to God and says, God, you can't take a joke. Now, this joke, unfortunately, is really our life. One of the things we've been talking about the last month since this conversation started, since we started having these topics about the coronavirus, and I'm doing my sermon on the phone and putting it on social media. And I love standing up here by the Ark. This is where we stand every Shabbos. I can think of all the people in our community and all the people we usually speak to, and even if you're not in our shul, but think about everyone. So one of the things that we discuss is this has been a wake-up call for everyone. But one of the concerns that many people have also asked me is, how do we make sure that this wake-up call, the feelings that we have, the things that we reminded ourselves and realize how important it is in our life, with our relationship with God, with our spouse, with our children, with life and business and all the things, how do we make sure that these feelings or this enlightenment that we got is not just here for this period, but that we actually will be able to make sure that this is part of our life later on. And I want to tell you, the answer we always find, Judaism gives us a great recipe for it. And it's actually happening these days. I don't know if you know, but right now we're part of a very beautiful period called the counting of the Omer. Let me give you a little bit of history of this. When the Jewish people left Egypt, Passover night, Moses told the Jewish people, the reason why we're leaving Egypt is in order to get to Mount Sinai and receive the Torah, the Bible from God. And we're going to start counting a 50-day count. It's called the counting of the Omer until we got the Torah. Now you may wonder, why didn't we get the Torah right away? Why do we need to count down for it? Why didn't, as soon as we left Egypt, as soon as we splitting of the sea, go to the mountain and get the Torah? And the reason is, because although we had the inspiration of leaving Egypt, although we had this inspiration and we're really excited and passionate and inspired after the splitting of the sea, but that's not enough in order for us to receive the Torah, because we ourselves need to work on ourselves and we ourselves need to change. And because we're going from slavery to freedom, it's like just like you see people in prison, they walk out, and a lot of them end up back in prison because they don't know how to live their life. Because you can take the boy out of Brooklyn, you can't take Brooklyn out of the boy. You can take the person out of prison, but you can't take the prison out of the person. So in spite of the great revelation of the mounts of the leaving Egypt and the great revelation of the splitting of the sea, that's not enough. We need to work on ourselves to be ready in order to receive the Torah. So every day the counting of the Omer is working on another part of ourselves in order to get to Mount Sinai and be ready for it. But you realize every day it's one little step. One little thing, work on one little part of your life, and that could ultimately change who you are. And this is something very, very important for us. Do we want to change? And do we want what we feel now to be part of our life in the future? Of course. But remember, once we walk away from this, we're ultimately going to go back to the way we were before, unless we work on one part of our life. That's all we need to do. One little part, and that one little part could be the change of our life. In our, in our relationship with our family, our relationship with our spouse. There was a couple that was once having major issues, and they're about to get divorced. And they came to a therapist and they said, let me give you advice. We're not going to be able to change your relationship, but just why don't you do one little thing in the relationship? He says, what is it? Every day I want you to give each other a compliment, but a genuine compliment. That's it. Everything else, don't worry about in your relationship. There's so many other issues, just do that. You know what happened? Once they started doing that one little thing, that had a global effect on their relationship. The same exact thing as parents, children. A lot of times there's major fights within that relationship. You know what? Every day, have a 5-minute conversation, and it shouldn't be about anything that is very sticky and you fight about. Just talk about anything else. And that eventually affects everything else. The same exact thing is our relationship with God. You can't be, you know what, I'm going to change and do everything that God said, so it's not going to happen. We would love it to happen, but let's do one little thing. You know what? On a daily basis, study Torah for 10 minutes. That 10 minutes could have an effect on you the whole day. Or Friday night, let's have a Friday night dinner. That Friday night dinner affects how we feel about our relationship with God the whole week. Let's just do one thing of the things that we know that's important. Or spending more time with our family. You know what? Once a week, we're going to make sure we come home early. Find that one thing within every aspect of your life, and that's all we're going to put in our life. But you'll see that that one thing is going to change many other things in your life. You know, we have the same thing in exercise. A lot of times people say, you know what, I'm going to get in shape. You know, the January, everyone is joining gyms. Remember the days used to be gyms? Then what happens? They take on too much and then they forget about everything else, about gyms. But the truth is, if you just say, you know what, twice a week I'm going to start doing this exercise. And it'll be for a half hour. Do things, small steps, but those small steps are eventually going to bring big steps. This is the one way we guarantee that everything that we feel right now will not only be a feeling that we could talk about or write about, but it actually is going to be a life-altering experience. Follow what God told the Jewish people right when we became a nation, step by step, one small step after another small step. That eventually ends you to Mount Sinai. That eventually takes you for this great revelation of receiving the Torah. Let's start doing this now. Let's start writing down in every part of our life what we're going to do. And then we're guaranteed, just like the Jewish people stood at Mount Sinai, Ish echad, b'leiv echad, with one person, with one heart. The same exact thing, we as a community in a world will be a different world by all of us doing one small step. Shabbat Shalom.